Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk more about karma and fate versus free will, which is one of the biggest questions that comes up. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I post videos every week on Ayurveda, astrology, and other topics to help you up-level your health and your life. So the big question that I get a lot and that people are always talking about and have since the beginning of human consciousness, I'm imagining, are the things that happen in our life fated, or are they subject to our will? Now, in classical Indian thought, there was probably more emphasis on fate. And now in the modern kind of westernized world, we put a lot more emphasis on free will, and we don't put enough emphasis, I believe, on the things, the factors, the karmas, if you want to call them that, the fate that we have come into this lifetime with. So my favorite analogy that I've heard from my teachers is that of a car. If we're going along on a highway, say at 90 miles per hour, and there's some big karmic thing coming up in the road, say we're texting or we're listening to music or whatever, and we're unaware, and therefore that karmic thing comes and say it's another car and we smash into it, we have a lot less free will to make a change if we're going that fast, right? So our choice is to go slower, to not text while we're driving, to be aware, right? And that is the aspect of free will that comes into play. So another thing that the Agori Vimalananda, who's my teacher's teacher, said is that if you are destined to have a rock hit you on the head, you might much rather have it be a pebble or be wearing a helmet than it be a boulder with no helmet, right? So that's the thing that Jyotish helps us, or Vedic astrology helps us to see, is where those rocks, those things that are inevitably going to happen, could impact us, and what are the remedies or what are the things we can do. And just by bringing our awareness to them, we are enacting the intention to shift. And the intention can be really powerful. So in Ayurveda, we say that when you have faith in the medicine, the procedure, the doctor, in a higher power, whatever it is, you are 50% well. So similarly, when we look at the birth chart or the karmic map and we see, hey, there's a tough karma here, just putting our intention, putting our focus on it with the intention to transform it actually helps us to move in that direction. And it helps us to focus and bring our energy and bring support and guidance from the universe to that particular issue. So somebody asked me, how do we work with difficult karmas? And this is the first part. It's being aware of them. And there may be these really strong tendencies in our chart, but I always tell my clients, you want to become the observer of those intensities. Like say, like the client I just had is dealing with anxiety. And this is a really prevalent problem right now. So for example, if there's a really strong preponderance to have anxiety in somebody's chart, we want them to be able to observe themselves having anxiety, right? Instead of just being anxious all the time. So it's one step removed, and it gives us a little bit more space and a little bit more empowerment to be like, oh, I don't want to have those thoughts circling in my head, so I'm going to go take a bath or go for a walk, right? So it gives us that choice. So this is one way to work with really difficult karmas. Another thing is it's really important to have a routine. And that is, helping us to be calm, because we want to have neutrality around our hard karmas. We do not want to react, reject, kick and scream, push away, ignore, numb, dissociate. We don't want to do those things. Now, there is something called a conscious dissociation. That is when we say, okay, I've been dealing with this, and now I'm going to rest by reading a novel from the 19th century, for example. This is something that we can do by choice rather than in order to run away, right? So there's a difference between those two things. But this is really important. When we have hard karmas, we can't look away, we cannot push away, because that actually exacerbates them. We need to ask, what is this teaching me, right? Because the most important thing to remember is that we chose this life. We chose to come into this body with this constellation of people in our lives in order to transform and work through these karmas. So if you have a heavy karmic load, it's because you can handle it. I know that sounds harsh because maybe some things are just crazy, right? And we all go through hard things, and some of us go through really intense things. So I'm not saying I don't have compassion for that. I 100% do. But those hard karmas in our life are purifying and intensifying our karmic load so that we can move through that stuff and get to the other side of it. So in order to deal with hard karmas, we must stay grounded. We must take care of our body and mind. We must be in a routine, something that is what is grounding us and creating a good foundation for us to become neutral if we're not right now. If we're not neutral, we should have our feelings. It's important to allow feelings to flow and not to stop them up. But we also can choose to not get wrapped up in our feelings. So another person asked how we determine what types of karmas there are in charts and how strong they are. So the main rule with Vedic astrology is confluence. When we see something occurring in different charts and in different ways within a chart, there's different signals happening that are showing us that something is really strong in the chart. So that is how we can tell if something is more of a stuck karma. So that's one kind of karma. There's a movable karma, there's a stuck karma, and there's a somewhat stuck and somewhat movable karma, basically. But then there's also karmas that are ready to be born, and then there's karmas that are more latent. So when I'm looking at a karmic map, I'm looking at all of this and I'm trying to process all of it for the specific areas of life that someone is focused on. I like to think of this in terms of a river in order to explain it. So when I think about the Ganges River in June, it's very full and it's flowing very fast, right? So this could represent karmas that are more intense. And say we are on the side of the river and there's a branch sticking out and we're able to grab it and we don't get pulled away in the water. That is like a movable karma, right? It's a little bit less intense. And even though something intense happens, we get that branch, right? If a karma is more stuck, that represents being like in the middle of the river and being pulled forward through the river. And maybe there's not a lot of options. Maybe there's not a lot of branches that reach out that far or people who can rescue you if you're in the middle of the river and it's very strong waters. Now the stuck, unstuck, or the stuck, partially movable, partially stuck karmas, I'm doing a loose translation from Sanskrit. Those are actually, where some element of possibility is at play, right? So you're in the middle of the river, but then somebody throws you a life raft, or you are able to grab onto a branch when the river curves and you go to the side by momentum, right? And just to say, because somebody asked me about positive karmas and how those come to play, these are important too. We're not here to just suffer our karmas. Karmas are also positive. So there can also be confluence, just like I'm describing, for really strong karmas to enjoy or to get a lot of money or to be famous or whatever. And this is why a lot of times Jyotishis or Vedic astrologers will look at famous people's charts, because they have really interesting combinations and confluence, and it's nice to study that. With anybody's chart, there's going to be good karmas and there's going to be harder karmas. That's the nature of being human. So I hope this is helpful for you to understand a little bit more about this subject of fate or free will. My instincts, my opinion is that there's a lot of fate at play that kind of casts the dice of our chart and our karmic map, but we also do have free will, But because I come from a Western frame and a Western culture, I would just like to help us de-emphasize free will because it can get us into trouble. I know for myself, I spent my 20s thinking I was doing everything and I was trying to make a career and make things happen. Thinking that we can do everything ourselves is a very direct way to burn out. And energetically speaking, it can be really helpful for a lot of people, especially modern people, people with strong Mars or strong Sun in their chart, to be able to rest and surrender a bit to knowing that there is something bigger at play, that it's not just about us, that we're not in charge, and that fate has the last say. Free will can allow us to navigate more skillfully. Looking at our karmic map can give us more focus and more awareness of the different aspects of our chart. But ultimately, we are not in charge. So I hope this helps you and gives you a little bit more perspective. And if you have any other questions about karma, please place them below in the comments and I'm happy to do another video. I love this topic, obviously. I could talk about it all day. So I hope it's helpful and I hope you have a wonderful day.